Bertrand Russell, The Problems of Philosophy. Have you ever wondered if the world around you is real? Or if what you know to be true is really true? In The Problems of Philosophy, Bertrand Russell invites you to question everything you think you understand to be true. He asks questions like, can we trust our senses? And is there a reality beyond what we see? In doing so, Russell challenges everyone to reflect more deeply about the nature of knowledge itself. He also explores the clash between idealism and realism, asking if the world exists only in our minds or independently of us. He also ponders universals, which are the qualities that objects share, like redness or roundness. Are they real or just ideals? As Russell puts it, philosophy is to be studied not for the sake of any definite answers to its questions, since no definite answers can, as a rule, be known to be true, but rather for the sake of the questions themselves. This blink dives deep into these questions and some of Russell's other mind-bending ideas that are still shaping how we think today. How do you know what you think you know? Bertrand Russell, born in 1872 to a prominent British family, lived through a period of immense social and intellectual change. As the Victorian era gave way to the 20th century, he emerged as a leading voice in philosophy, mathematics, and social reform. Educated at Cambridge, he quickly distinguished himself as a brilliant logician and philosopher. His early work focused on the foundations of mathematics, culminating in the groundbreaking Principia Mathematica, co-authored with Alfred North Whitehead in 1910 through 1913. In 1912, at the age of 40, Russell published The Problems of Philosophy. This work arrived during a time of great upheaval in the philosophical world. Traditional metaphysics was being challenged by new ideas in logic and science. Russell, along with contemporaries like G.E. Moore, was at the forefront of this revolution in thought. The Problems of Philosophy distills complex philosophical issues into accessible language for a general audience. Russell introduces readers to fundamental questions about the nature of reality, the limits of human knowledge, and the purpose of philosophical inquiry itself. In the next chapters, we'll explore several key themes from Russell's work and why they had such an outsized impact on philosophy. First, we'll look at his take on the nature of reality. Russell examines the distinction between appearance and reality, challenging our everyday assumptions about the world around us. Then we'll examine Russell's ideas about the limits of knowledge, exploring the idea of what we can know with certainty and how we acquire knowledge. This leads to another resonant point in Russell's work, Idealism versus Realism. Russell tackles the age-old debate between these two philosophical perspectives, offering his own nuanced view. Another prominent concept Russell forwards in this work is that of universals. So we'll examine Russell's thoughts on these abstract concepts that may or may not exist independently of particular things. Appearance versus reality. Imagine yourself sitting at a table. You see its smooth surface, feel its solid weight, and admire its rich brown color. But is this table truly as it appears to you? Bertrand Russell challenges you to look deeper. Russell uses this everyday object to introduce a fundamental philosophical question. What's the relationship between appearance and reality? At first glance, the answer seems obvious. The table is exactly as you perceive it. It's just a table. Then Russell points out that your experience of the table changes based on your perspective. Move around it, for instance, and the shape seems to shift. Change the lighting, and the color appears more subdued. Even the sensation of solidity, Russell argues, is just your experience of resistance when you press against it. So, what then is the real table? For Russell, your experience of the table is based on sense data, your immediate subjective experiences of color, shape, and texture that make up your perception. These sense data are certain and undeniable, but they're not the table itself. Russell posits that there must be some real table causing your sense data. This physical object exists independently of your perception, with properties that scientists might describe in terms of atoms and energy. But you can never directly experience this real table. you're always limited to your sense data. This distinction between appearance and reality has profound implications. It suggests that the world as you know it is, in a sense, constructed by your mind from raw sensory input. The gap between your perception and the underlying reality raises questions about the limits of human knowledge and the nature of the physical world. Russell's table example is more than just a thought experiment. It invites you to question your assumptions about the seemingly solid, dependable world around you. By examining something as mundane as a table, Russell opens the door to a deeper understanding of reality itself. As you move through your day, take a moment to consider how much of what you perceive is appearance and how much is reality. The answer may be more complex and more fascinating than you ever imagined. The nature of knowledge. You're certain the sun will rise tomorrow. But how do you know this to be true? Russell challenges you to examine the foundations of your knowledge to see how sure it is. Consider a simple mathematical truth. 2 + 2 = 4. You know this with absolute certainty, regardless of your experiences in the physical world. Russell calls this a priori knowledge, truths we can know independently of observation. Now think about your knowledge that water boils at 100 degrees Celsius at sea level. This is empirical knowledge, based on observation and experience. But can you be as certain about this as you are about 2 + 2 = 4? Russell argues that much of our knowledge about the world is based on induction, or the process of drawing general conclusions from specific observations. You've seen the sun rise countless times, so you expect it to rise tomorrow. But this expectation, however reasonable, isn't logically guaranteed. This is the problem of induction. How can we justify beliefs about things we can't observe based on what we have observed? It's a question that strikes at the heart of scientific reasoning and our everyday understanding of the world. Russell doesn't provide an easy solution to this problem. Instead, he invites you to recognize the different types of knowledge and their varying degrees of certainty. Some truths, like those in mathematics and logic, can be known with absolute certainty. Others, including most of our knowledge about the physical world, involve some level of probability or assumption. This distinction doesn't mean we should doubt everything. Rather, it encourages a more nuanced understanding of knowledge. It reminds you to critically examine your beliefs and the evidence supporting them. As Russell puts it, the man who has no tincture of philosophy goes through life imprisoned in the prejudices derived from common sense, from the habitual beliefs of his age or his nation, and from convictions which have grown up in his mind without the cooperation or consent of his deliberate reason. By questioning the nature of knowledge, you free yourself from unexamined assumptions. You become more open to new ideas and better equipped to navigate the complexities of the world around you. Idealism versus realism. Have you ever heard the old chestnut, if a tree falls in the forest and no one is there to hear it, does it make a sound? Believe it or not, this question gets to the heart of the debate between idealism and realism, one of the major themes in the problems of philosophy. Idealism, championed by philosophers like George Berkeley, argues that the world exists only in our minds. According to this view, your experience of the forest is all there is. There's no independent physical reality beyond your perceptions. As Berkeley famously put it, to be is to be perceived. At first, this might seem absurd. Surely the forest continues to exist when you leave. But Russell challenges you to prove it. After all, you only ever experience your own perceptions. How can you be sure there's anything beyond them? Despite acknowledging the difficulty of disproving idealism, Russell ultimately argues for a form of realism. He suggests that it's more reasonable to believe in a physical world that exists independently of our minds. This external reality causes our perceptions, but isn't identical to them. So if a tree falls in the forest with no one around, realism says it does make a sound, even if no one hears it. Russell's realism doesn't mean we can know the external world perfectly. Remember the table from the last chapter. We only ever experience our sense data, not the table itself. But realism asserts that there is a real table out there causing our perceptions. This debate might seem abstract, but it has profound implications. Realism forms the basis for scientific inquiry, assuming there's an objective world we can study and understand. It also aligns with our intuitive sense that the world doesn't disappear when we close our eyes. By grappling with idealism and realism, you're engaging with fundamental questions about the nature of reality. You're challenged to examine your basic assumptions about the world and your place in it. As you go about your day, consider, are you creating the world with your mind or discovering an independently existing reality? Universals and particulars. Think of two red apples. They're separate objects, but they share the quality of redness. This common property, redness, is what Bertrand Russell calls a universal. In the Problems of Philosophy, Russell takes on the age-old debate on the nature of universals and their relationship to particular things. Particulars are the individual objects you encounter in the world. This apple, that chair, your neighbor's cat. Universals, on the other hand, are the properties or qualities that particulars can share. Redness, roundness, sweetness, these are all universals. You might wonder why this distinction matters. Well, Russell argues that universals are crucial for understanding the world and communicating about it. When you say all roses are red, you're not just talking about specific roses you've seen, but about the universal concept of roseness and its relationship to the universal redness. Consider how you learn new things. When you encounter a new fruit, you might describe it as round like an apple, but purple like a plum. You're using universals to make sense of a particular object you've never seen before. Russell's idea of universals has roots in Plato's theory of forms, but with a modern twist. Unlike Plato, Russell doesn't see universals as existing in a separate realm. Instead, he views them as abstract entities that don't exist in space and time, but are nonetheless real. This view challenges both idealism and materialism. Universals aren't just ideas in our minds, nor are they physical objects. They're a distinct kind of reality that plays a crucial role in our understanding of the world. Russell writes, "The study of universals is the central business of philosophy." By this, he means that understanding the nature of universals is key to grasping how we think about and describe the world. The value of philosophy. You might wonder, after exploring these abstract ideas, what's the point of it all? Bertrand Russell anticipates this question in the Problems of Philosophy, offering a compelling vision of philosophy's value. Imagine you've lived your entire life in a small village, never venturing beyond its borders. One day, you climb the highest nearby hill and see a vast landscape stretching to the horizon. Your world suddenly expands, filled with new possibilities. This, Russell suggests, is what philosophy does for the mind. It liberates you from the tyranny of custom, expanding your intellectual horizons beyond the narrow confines of everyday life. Philosophy doesn't necessarily provide definitive answers. Instead, its value lies in the questions it raises and the ways of thinking it cultivates. When you grapple with philosophical problems, you develop critical thinking skills that apply to all areas of life. Consider how examining the nature of knowledge might change your approach to information. You become more discerning, better able to evaluate claims and evidence. Exploring ethics might deepen your understanding of moral issues, helping you make more thoughtful decisions. Russell himself exemplified this philosophical approach throughout his long and eventful life. In the tumultuous years following the publication of The Problems of Philosophy, his career took many unexpected turns. During World War I, he became a prominent anti-war activist, a stance that cost him his position at Cambridge University. Undeterred, Russell continued to apply his philosophical thinking to real-world issues. In the 1920s and 1930s, he wrote extensively on education, marriage, and social reform. His unconventional views often stirred controversy, but also sparked important public debates. During World War II, Russell returned to academia in the United States, but was again embroiled in controversy due to his views on morality and religion. The post-war years saw Russell emerge as a leading voice for nuclear disarmament and world peace. He co-founded the Pugwash Conferences, bringing together scientists and public figures to work towards reducing the danger of armed conflict. This work, along with his prolific writing career, led to him being awarded the Nobel Prize in Literature in 1950. Until his death in 1970 at the age of 97, Russell continued to engage with the pressing issues of his time, from the Vietnam War to the cultural changes of the 1960s. His life stands as a testament to the practical value of philosophical thinking, demonstrating how the cultivation of critical thought and intellectual humility can lead to a life of engagement and purpose. The main takeaway of this link to The Problems of Philosophy by Bertrand Russell is that it challenges everyone to question their understanding of reality, knowledge, and certainty. Russell argues that there's a distinction between appearance and reality, suggesting that our perceptions may not accurately represent the true nature of things. He explores different types of knowledge, distinguishing between a priori and empirical knowledge, and introduces the problem of induction. He engages the debate between idealism and realism, ultimately advocating for a form of realism that acknowledges an external reality independent of our perceptions. Ultimately, the work emphasizes the value of philosophical thinking in expanding our intellectual horizons, developing critical thinking skills, and fostering a more engaged and purposeful life. Okay, and that is it for this Blink. We hope you enjoyed it, and if you can, please take the time to leave us a rating, because we always appreciate your feedback. All right, see you in the next Blink. Bye.